In the quiet stretch of countryside just beyond the edge of town, a dilapidated barn stood stubbornly against the sky, its weathered boards creaking in the soft breeze. The late afternoon sunlight filtered through gaps in the roof, casting long, skeletal shadows on the dry, cracked earth. Mia Thompson stood at the edge of the property, her hand resting gently on her rounded belly, steadying herself as if to remind herself she was real. That this was real. The barn, with its peeling red paint and sagging roof, looked as if it had been abandoned for decades, a relic of a time when the fields around it had been alive with a hum of harvest. Neighbors had warned her, whispered behind closed doors, and outright laughed at the idea. Buying that old barn, pregnant and chasing ghosts? They said the place was nothing but a money pit, a foolish gamble by a woman who should be focusing on preparing for her child, not chasing pipe dreams. But Mia had heard it all before, the doubts, the dismissals, and still, she had crossed the threshold into this forgotten corner of the world, driven by a quiet certainty she couldn't yet explain. Before we continue, make sure to like and subscribe to never miss a new video. And tell me, where are you watching this video from? I love seeing all different people come together for these stories. She ran a hand over the rough wood of the barn's side, feeling the grain beneath her fingers. Brittle and dry. The air smelled faintly of hay and earth, mingled with the scent of must and thyme. The grass around the barn was tall and wild, bending and swaying as if whispering secrets only the wind could understand. Mia's boots crunched on the gravel path as she stepped closer, her eyes scanning the structure for any sign of life or promise. The townsfolk had painted a picture of desolation, a place too far gone to save. A foolish dream for anyone, let alone a woman soon to bring new life into the world. But as Mia looked up at the barn's crooked silhouette against the sky, she saw something else. A place that held stories, a place where new beginnings could take root in the soil of old dreams. She felt a strange pull, a quiet invitation whispering through the cracks in the wood. Mia's thoughts drifted back to the moment she first saw the listing, a simple notice buried among countless others in a local paper. The barn was for sale, a forgotten piece of land at the outskirts of town, priced far below what anyone might expect. It wasn't just the price that caught her attention. It was the promise of space, of quiet, of a fresh start away from the judgment and noise of her old life. Here, she imagined, she could build something different, something safe for her child. But that dream had been met with scorn. Her parents had shaken their heads in disbelief, her friends had exchanged nervous glances, and the town's gossip mill had churned out rumors about her sanity and her sense. Why waste your money? They asked. Why choose a crumbling barn when you could settle down somewhere normal? The question stung, but Mia's resolve only hardened. She pulled her jacket tighter around her, the cool air brushing against her skin. The barn's door hung slightly ajar, swaying gently as if inviting her in. She hesitated for a moment, the weight of her pregnancy grounding her in the present, yet the promise of what lay inside, tugging at her curiosity. With a deep breath, she stepped forward and pushed the door open, the hinges groaning in protest. A rush of stale air greeted her, carrying with it the scent of dust and forgotten years. Inside, the barn was cloaked in shadow, the sunlight filtering through the gaps in the boards, creating a patchwork of light and dark on the dirt floor. Old farming tools leaned against the walls, rusted and worn, tangled in cobwebs that shimmered like silver threads in the faint light. The air was thick with stillness, as if time itself had paused here, waiting for someone to stir it back to life. Mia's eyes adjusted to the dimness, and she took a tentative step inside, the wooden floorboards creaking beneath her weight. The space was larger than she had imagined, the high beams arching overhead like the ribs of some great, slumbering beast. Dust motes danced in the shafts of light, swirling lazily in the air. It was a place of silence and secrets, a place that had held its breath for years. As she moved deeper into the barn, a sudden draft brushed against the back of her neck, sending a shiver down her spine. She turned toward the far corner, where a loose plank in the wall caught her eye. It was out of place, slightly ajar, as if it had been disturbed recently or waiting to be discovered. Mia's heart quickened with a mix of apprehension and hope. What could be hidden behind that plank? Why had it been left so accessible? She knelt down, her fingers tracing the edges of the wood. Beneath the plank, she found a small latch, cleverly concealed but unmistakable. Her breath hitched as she lifted it, the sound of the latch clicking open, echoing through the empty space. The plank swung inward, revealing a narrow, dark opening, a secret door embedded in the barn's wall. Mia's mind raced. The neighbors' laughter seemed to fade away, replaced by the steady beat of her own determination. This barn was more than just a decaying relic. It held mysteries waiting to be uncovered, stories waiting to be told. And maybe, just maybe, it held the key to the fresh start she desperately needed. She glanced down at her belly, feeling the soft movements of the life growing inside her. She was no longer just a woman facing ridicule. She was a mother-to-be, a guardian of new beginnings. The barn's secrets beckoned, promising shelter and sanctuary in a world that had often felt cold and unwelcoming. With a steadying breath, Mia reached into the darkness beyond the door, ready to step into the unknown. The wind whispered through the broken windows, carrying with it the promise of change. The neighbors might laugh, the town might doubt her. But here, in the quiet heart of the forgotten barn, Mia felt a spark of hope, fragile, flickering, but fiercely alive. As she prepared to descend into whatever lay hidden beyond the secret door, the sun dipped lower behind the hills, casting the barn in a warm, golden glow. It was a moment suspended in time, the beginning of a journey that would test her courage and change her life forever. The barn was no longer just an old structure at the edge of town. It was the threshold to a future she was determined to claim for herself and her child. Just a week earlier, Mia had sat in the cramped living room of her small apartment, the glow of her laptop casting sharp shadows across her face. The glow illuminated the search results she'd been scrolling through for what felt like hours. Listings for places far beyond her modest budget, apartments too small to raise a child in, homes surrounded by noise and chaos. The walls around her seemed to close in with every failed click, every price tag that was far too high. The weight of uncertainty pressed down on her chest, heavier than the growing life inside her. Her doctor's words echoed in her mind. You need space, fresh air, a calm environment to prepare for the baby. But living in the city meant crowded streets, cramped rooms, and the suffocating hum of traffic. Mia desperately longed to escape it all, to find a place where her child could grow up free from the whispers and judgment that had always followed her. That's when she first saw the listing for the barn. It was almost an afterthought, buried in the classifieds under property for sale, with a price that seemed impossibly low. A rundown barn on the outskirts of town, far from the city's noise, surrounded by fields and sky. It called to her, a beacon of possibility amid the uncertainty. Her heart had leapt with a mix of hope and anxiety as she clicked on the pictures. The barn was weathered and worn, its red paint peeling like sunburned skin. But there was something undeniably beautiful about its crooked silhouette against the open sky. It wasn't just a structure, it was a promise. But the decision to buy it was far from easy. Her phone buzzed incessantly with texts and calls from family and friends, each one filled with concern, skepticism, or outright disbelief. "Mia, are you sure about this?" her sister had asked, her voice thick with worry. "That barn looks like it's falling apart. You're pregnant. Why risk it?" Her mother's words were harsher. "You're chasing fantasies, Mia. You need to think about what's best for you and the baby, not some broken-down building that will drain your savings." Even her closest friends hadn't held back their doubts. Invitations to dinners and baby showers dwindled as whispers of her crazy barn idea spread through their circles. The isolation was palpable, but so was Mia's determination. She knew the path ahead wouldn't be easy, but she craved a fresh start, a place where she could rewrite the story of her life. One night, after a particularly tense phone call with her mother, Mia sat on the edge of her bed and pressed her hands to her belly. The baby fluttered gently in response, a tiny heartbeat against her palm. She whispered a promise to the unborn child. "I'll find a way. We'll have a home where we belong." The next morning, she contacted the real estate agent and arranged to see the barn. Driving out of the city, the landscape changed from crowded streets to open fields, and the weight on her chest began to lift with the widening horizon. The air smelled different here, fresher, cleaner, filled with the scent of earth and possibility. When she arrived, the barn stood silent and still, surrounded by tall grass that brushed against her legs as she walked. The sun warmed her skin, and for a moment, the doubts that had plagued her in the city seemed distant and faint. This place, with all its flaws and scars, felt like the first page of a new chapter. Yet, even as she toured the property with the agent, the voices of the townsfolk echoed in her mind. She had heard their laughter and whispers before making the trip. Neighbors muttering about the pregnant woman wasting her money. Friends warning her that the barn was more trouble than it was worth. Their skepticism was a constant undercurrent, but it only fueled her resolve. Mia pictured herself here, transforming the barn into a home, a sanctuary where her child could grow up surrounded by peace and love. The thought steadied her nerves and pushed back the fears that threatened to overwhelm her. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Mia sat at a small cafe on the edge of town, her journal open before her. She wrote down her thoughts, fears, hopes, dreams, spilling ink onto the pages like a map leading her toward the future she envisioned. The barn was more than just a building. It was a symbol of her courage, a testament to her refusal to be defined by the doubts of others. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from her partner, David. "I'm proud of you," it read simply. "No matter what happens, we're in this together." Mia smiled, the warmth of his words wrapping around her like a blanket against the chill of uncertainty. With his support, the voices of doubt seemed less daunting. She was no longer alone in this journey. That night, back in her apartment, she stared at the ceiling, her mind replaying the day's moments. The barn's rough timbers, the rusted tools, the wild grass swaying in the wind. Each detail etched itself into her memory. She felt a strange kinship with the place, as if it too had been waiting for someone to believe in it again. Despite the growing excitement, anxiety gnawed at her. Could she really turn this broken barn into a home? Was she strong enough to face the challenges ahead, especially with a child on the way? The questions were relentless, but so was her hope. Her decision was made, not lightly, but with conviction. She would buy the barn. She would create a space where her child could feel safe and loved, where they could grow without fear or judgment. The laughter of the townsfolk, the weight of their skepticism, would not define her. As she closed her journal and prepared for bed, Mia felt a quiet determination settle over her. This was more than just a purchase. It was a leap of faith. And though the path ahead was uncertain, she was ready to walk it. For herself, for her child, and for the new life waiting to bloom beneath the broken beams of an old barn. The next morning, she called the real estate agent. "I want it," she said firmly, the words ringing with newfound strength. "The barn is ours." And with that, the whispers of doubt began to fade, replaced by the steady rhythm of hope, the first steps toward a future only she could envision. The morning sun had barely risen when Mia pulled up to the edge of the property again, this time with David and her childhood friend Lena riding shotgun. The car's tires crunched on the gravel driveway, stirring up a faint cloud of dust that shimmered in the early light. The barn loomed ahead, its worn red paint faded but somehow still vibrant against the clear blue sky. Today wasn't just about looking at the barn. It was about imagining the life they could build here together. David stepped out first, stretching his arms above his head, his breath visible in the crisp morning air. He was quiet but steady, his presence a quiet reassurance to Mia as she opened the car door, gingerly shifting the weight of her pregnancy. Lena, ever the spark of energy, was already scanning the barn's exterior with a mixture of curiosity and excitement. "Looks rough," David said, his voice low but not unkind as he surveyed the sagging roof and warped wooden beams. "But it's solid enough. I think it just needs some serious work." Mia nodded, her fingers resting on her belly. "That's what I was hoping. It's not about what it is now, but what it can become." The three of them made their way toward the barn's entrance, the grass crunching beneath their feet and the scent of earth and autumn leaves filling the air. The door creaked loudly as David pushed it open, revealing the barn's interior in stark contrast to the bright morning outside. Dust motes hung suspended in the shafts of sunlight that filtered through cracks in the walls. Old farming tools and rusted machinery lay scattered, forgotten relics of a bygone era. Lena stepped inside first, her eyes wide as she took in the cavernous space. "It's huge," she murmured, echoing Mia's own thoughts. "You'll have plenty of room, that's for sure." Mia's gaze traveled upward to the rafters, where beams stretched high above, supporting the barn's sagging roof. The silence was heavy, broken only by the occasional drip of water from a leaky spot above. She could almost hear the echoes of past seasons. The clatter of horseshoes, the rustle of hay, the voices of farmers long gone. As they moved further inside, a sudden chill brushed past them, carried on a faint draft that seemed oddly out of place. Mia's eyes caught sight of a plank in the far corner of the barn's interior wall, slightly misaligned and trembling ever so slightly, as if it had recently been disturbed. Her heart quickened, a whisper of curiosity stirring beneath her apprehension. David noticed her gaze and followed it. "You see that?" he said, stepping closer. "That plank doesn't look right." Lena crouched down to examine it more closely. "Could be loose, or maybe it's hiding something," she said, a mischievous glint in her eyes. Mia's breath caught. The idea of something hidden beneath the barn's surface felt like a secret waiting to be uncovered, something that might explain the strange pull she had felt since her first visit. With David's help, Mia gently pried at the edges of the plank. It shifted slightly, but wouldn't budge entirely. The three exchanged glances, a shared excitement mingling with a flicker of unease. Was it just a forgotten storage space? Or something more? "I think it's a door," David said finally, his voice low. Mia's pulse quickened. The barn was no longer just a building. It was a puzzle, a mystery wrapped in dust and shadow. She felt the weight of her pregnancy settle like a stone in her belly. but also a determination to see this through. "We should find a flashlight," Lena suggested, already reaching into her bag. "If there's something behind there, we'll want to see it." Mia nodded, grateful for their support. The idea of exploring the unknown both thrilled and unsettled her, but she was ready to face it head on. Whatever lay hidden beneath the barn might be the key to making this place home. David found a sturdy wooden plank nearby and used it to lever open the concealed door. With a creak that echoed through the empty barn, the plank gave way, revealing a narrow, dark stairwell descending beneath the floor. The air that rose from the opening was cool and damp, carrying a faint scent of earth and something else. Something old. Mia peered into the darkness, her breath catching. The light from the barn didn't reach far, and the shadows seemed to press in like a living thing. She placed a hand on David's arm, steadying herself against the unfamiliar chill. "Are you sure about this?" David asked quietly, concern flickering in his eyes. Mia swallowed her fear. "I have to know what's down there," she said firmly. "This barn, it feels like it's waiting to tell me something." Lena switched on her flashlight, the beam slicing through the darkness and revealing the narrow wooden steps leading downward. The floor beneath the stairs was covered in dust and debris, but the steps themselves looked surprisingly intact, worn smooth by time. One by one, they began the descent, the old wood creaking beneath their weight. The air grew cooler and heavier as they moved deeper, the faint scent growing stronger, earthy, musty, with a hint of something metallic. The beam of the flashlight revealed rough stone walls enclosing a small underground chamber. At the bottom, the space opened into a low-ceilinged room, filled with crates and old wooden boxes stacked haphazardly. Cobwebs draped the corners like delicate lace, and scattered papers lay strewn across a weathered table. Mia's heart pounded as she stepped forward, the beam catching on objects that seemed out of place. A faded, leather-bound journal, dried flowers pressed between yellowed pages, and strange artifacts whose purpose she couldn't yet discern. She knelt down, reaching for the journal, its cover cracked and worn by time. The handwriting inside was elegant yet hurried, the ink faded but still legible. As she flipped through the pages, a story began to emerge. A tale of a woman who had lived here long ago. A story of struggle, hope, and a fight for independence. Mia's fingers trembled as she read the words, feeling an unexpected connection to the woman whose voice echoed through the faded ink. In that underground room, surrounded by relics of the past, Mia found a reflection of her own journey, of resilience in the face of doubt, of courage born from necessity. David and Lena watched quietly, sensing the weight of the moment without interrupting. The barn was no longer just a building waiting to be fixed. It was a vessel of history, a keeper of secrets that bound past and present in an unspoken promise. Mia closed the journal gently, her eyes shining with a mixture of wonder and resolve. The barn's mysteries were beginning to unfold, but she knew this was only the start. With each discovery, her vision for what this place could become grew clearer, fueled by the strength of those who had walked these halls long before her. She rose, brushing dust from her knees, and looked up at her friends. "This barn isn't just a place to live," she said quietly. "It's a home with a story. And I think it's time we listen." Mia's fingers lingered on the cracked leather cover of the journal, her breath shallow as she absorbed the weight of the words written so long ago. The flickering beam of Lena's flashlight cast dancing shadows across the cramped underground room, revealing more than just forgotten crates and dusty relics. It hinted at a secret waiting to be uncovered. Her eyes caught on something unusual near the back wall. A faint outline, almost imperceptible, where the stone seemed less weathered, as if concealing a hidden latch or panel. Mia's heart quickened, the thrill of discovery mingling with a flicker of apprehension. Could there be more beneath the surface of this barn than she had imagined? She rose slowly, the beam of light sweeping over the walls until it settled on the faint seam. Kneeling, she traced her fingers along the cool stone, feeling the subtle groove that betrayed the presence of a concealed door. The mechanism was cleverly built into the wall, nearly invisible to anyone not searching with intent. A sudden rush of adrenaline surged through her veins. This was it. The threshold into an unknown past, a secret kept hidden for decades, perhaps a century. She glanced back at David and Lena, their faces mirroring her mixture of excitement and hesitation. "Do you think we should open it?" Lena asked, voice barely above a whisper. Mia hesitated. The darkness beyond the wall seemed to pulse with mystery and danger, but her curiosity outweighed her fear. "We have to," she said firmly. "There's something here that wants to be found." David nodded, his steady presence grounding her. "Let's be careful." Together, they searched for a way to unlatch the door. Mia's fingers found a small, rusted lever hidden beneath a loose stone. With a tentative pull, a low grinding sound filled the chamber as the secret door slowly swung open, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling downward into utter darkness. A cool, damp air wafted upward, carrying the scent of earth and something older. Something forgotten. The faintest whisper of movement seemed to echo from below, as if the shadows themselves were alive. Mia swallowed hard, her pulse pounding in her ears. The stairwell was steep and cramped, the wooden steps worn smooth by time. Her hand instinctively went to her belly, feeling the gentle flutter of the baby within, a silent reminder of the life she was fighting to protect. "Are you sure about this?" David asked, concern etched across his face. She met his gaze, determination shining bright. "More than ever. This place, it's part of our story now." With Lena's flashlight leading the way, the three began their descent. The air grew cooler and heavier with each step, the silence deepening into a tangible presence. Shadows clung to the walls like ancient cobwebs, and the beam of light revealed glimpses of old wooden beams supporting the narrow stairwell. At the bottom, they stepped into a small, subterranean room, its low ceiling pressing close. The floor was covered in dust and scattered debris, but the air felt charged, alive with the weight of history. Mia's flashlight swept over crates stacked against the walls, their surfaces scarred and faded. Amid the clutter, an old midwife's kit caught her eye. A leather satchel worn soft with age, its clasp broken but contents still intact. Inside were delicate glass bottles, dried herbs, and a bundle of faded linen. The artifacts spoke of care and healing, of nights spent tending to lives in the shadows. Mia's breath caught. This was no ordinary storage room. It was a sanctuary, a refuge for those in need. She felt a deep connection to the woman who had once used these tools, who had risked everything to bring new life into the world. As she carefully lifted a weathered map from beneath a pile of papers, her eyes widened. The map detailed the surrounding lands, but what drew her attention was a marked spot beneath the barn. A hidden spring, a source of pure water concealed from the surface world. David leaned in, tracing the lines with his finger. If this spring is real, it could explain why this place was so important. Lena's voice trembled with awe. It's like the barn was more than shelter, it was a lifeline. Mia tucked the map carefully into her jacket, a newfound sense of purpose igniting within her. This discovery was more than a secret. It was a promise of hope, a foundation on which she could build a future for her child. Suddenly, a soft sound echoed from the far corner of the room. A faint rustling, like a breath or a whisper. The hairs on the back of Mia's neck stood on end. She glanced toward the darkness, heart pounding. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. David nodded, his eyes narrowing. "We're not alone down here." Lena swallowed hard, clutching Mia's arm. Maybe someone else knows about this place. Mia's mind raced. Was it a stray animal or something more? The air seemed charged with an unseen presence, watching, waiting. Summoning her courage, Mia stepped forward, shining the flashlight into the shadows. The beam landed on a faded symbol etched into the stone wall, a circle intertwined with delicate vines, worn by time but unmistakable. It was a mark of protection, a sign that this place had been guarded carefully. She traced the symbol with her finger, feeling a chill ripple through her. The barn was not just a building. It was a sanctuary with a story of defiance and hope. "We need to learn more," she said quietly. "About who lived here, what they protected." David nodded in agreement. "And why?" The trio gathered their findings, the journal, the midwife's kit, the map, and began the slow climb back up the staircase. The barn above awaited, its secrets partially revealed but still holding many mysteries. As they stepped into the light, the late afternoon sun warmed their faces, chasing away the chill of the underground chamber. Mia looked back at the barn, its worn boards and hidden doors now alive with meaning. She placed a hand on her belly, feeling the steady pulse of new life within. The barn was no longer just an old structure on the outskirts of town. It was a beacon of resilience, a place where past and future converged. With the discoveries freshly etched in her mind, Mia knew the journey ahead would be challenging. Fear battled with curiosity, but the hope that had carried her this far burned brighter than ever. She glanced at David and Lena, their faces reflecting the same quiet determination. Together, they would unlock the barn's secrets, protect its legacy, and carve out a new beginning. The hidden door had opened more than just a passage into darkness. It had opened a door into possibility. Mia sat cross-legged on the dusty floor of the underground room, the leather-bound journals open in her lap. The brittle pages whispered under her fingertips, each word a fragile thread connecting her to a woman who had lived a century before, in a world both foreign and hauntingly familiar. The dim beam of Lena's flashlight illuminated the faded ink, revealing stories that pulsed with courage, pain, and unyielding hope. Eleanor, the name etched across the first page, was more than just a figure from the past. She was a healer, a midwife who had devoted her life to bringing new life into a harsh, unforgiving world. Her words painted vivid scenes, the smell of herbs simmering on the stove, the hushed prayers whispered over newborns, and the fierce determination that kept her going despite the whispers of suspicion that followed her like shadows. Mia's breath caught as she read Eleanor's account of the accusations that had begun to mount. Suspicions of witchcraft, fueled by fear and ignorance. Eleanor had been a beacon for women in crisis, a refuge in a time when such compassion was often met with scorn and violence. Her disappearance remained a mystery, a silence that echoed through the pages like a wound left open. As Mia traced the faded script, a deep kinship blossomed within her. Here was a woman who had faced isolation and judgment, who had stood alone against a world that sought to break her spirit. Mia, too, had felt the sting of doubt and ridicule, her choices questioned and dismissed by those who couldn't see beyond their own fears. The parallels between their lives were striking. Both pregnant with hope, both navigating uncertain futures. Eleanor's strength seeped through the ink, a quiet defiance that stirred something fierce inside Mia. Lena shifted beside her, her voice soft. She was brave to do all that, knowing what people thought. Mia nodded, eyes still fixed on the journal. She had to be. Her work saved lives, and yet she was chased out by fear. David crouched nearby, examining another set of pages that detailed Eleanor's remedies and midwifery techniques. She was not just a healer, but a scholar of her craft, he observed. This knowledge was precious and dangerous. The journal revealed more than just personal stories. It hinted at hidden treasures, herbs and tools carefully concealed within the barn, and documents that could prove the innocence and importance of Eleanor's work. It spoke of a woman who had fought to protect her community, even as it turned against her. Mia's fingers brushed over a folded piece of parchment tucked between the pages, a map marked with cryptic symbols and notes. It suggested secret compartments within the barn, places where Eleanor had hidden her most vital possessions. The thought sent a thrill through Mia's veins. This barn was her sanctuary, Mia whispered, a place to heal, to hide, to hope. The weight of Eleanor's story settled over them, a mantle of responsibility that felt both heavy and inspiring. Mia realized that the barn was more than a shelter for her unborn child. It was a legacy waiting to be reclaimed. She closed the journal gently, the pages whispering shut like a promise kept. The flickering flashlight cast long shadows on the walls, as if the past itself had come alive around them. David stood, stretching his cramped muscles. We should start looking for those compartments. Lena nodded eagerly. If Eleanor hid her herbs and tools here, they might still be intact. Mia rose slowly, her hand resting protectively on her belly. The barn's silence seemed to hum with anticipation, the air thick with secrets waiting to be unearthed. She felt a surge of determination wash over her, fueled by Eleanor's courage and the promise of new beginnings. Outside, the fading light of day filtered through the cracks above, casting a golden glow that warmed the cool underground chamber. The barn was alive with history, its walls holding stories of survival and strength. Mia's mind raced with possibilities. If she could uncover Eleanor's hidden treasures, she could not only preserve the barn's legacy, but create a sanctuary of her own, a place where life could grow and thrive against all odds. Her thoughts drifted to her unborn child, a tiny heartbeat steady beneath her palm. The future felt fragile, but full of promise. Just like Eleanor, Mia was preparing to face a world that might not understand, but she would carry on regardless. We'll need to be careful, Mia said, voice steady. This barn means more than just a home. It's a link to a past that still has power. David smiled faintly. And with every piece we find, we bring that power back. The three of them began to move through the underground room, their flashlights sweeping over every corner, every crevice. They found old jars filled with dried herbs, carefully labeled in Eleanor's handwriting: lavender for calm, rosemary for memory, chamomile for healing. A rusted iron kettle rested atop a stone hearth, its surface scarred but intact. Behind a loose stone in the wall, Mia discovered a small compartment. Inside lay a collection of delicate tools, a silver birthing hook, bone needles, and bundles of linen swatches. The artifact spoke of both fragility and resilience, a testament to the quiet strength of the women who had depended on them. As she lifted the tools gently, Mia imagined Eleanor's hands, steady and sure, working by candlelight to bring new life into the world. The thought filled her with awe and gratitude. This isn't just history, Mia said softly. It's a bridge. Lena smiled, eyes shining. between then and now, between fear and hope. Mia's heart swelled with a profound sense of connection. She was no longer just a woman who had bought an old barn. She was part of a lineage of courage and care that transcended time. Outside, the wind whispered through the cracks in the barn's weathered boards, carrying with it the scent of earth and possibility. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of pink and gold. Mia stood at the threshold of the underground room, the weight of Eleanor's story resting gently on her shoulders. She felt the steady rhythm of her child's heartbeat, a reminder that life was a cycle of endings and beginnings. With renewed purpose, Mia knew that the barn was more than a structure. It was a sanctuary of resilience, a place where past struggles could inspire present strength. Together, they would uncover the barn's secrets, honor its history, and build a future where hope could take root and flourish. The first knock came on a gray, overcast morning when the sky hung heavy with the threat of rain. Mia was in the barn's main room, tracing the outline of a faded symbol carved into one of the wooden beams, when a firm knock echoed from the front door. She exchanged a glance with David, her stomach tightening. Not from the pregnancy this time, but from the sudden tension that filled the air. Opening the door, Mia found two men in dark suits, their expressions unreadable but their presence unmistakably official. One held a clipboard, the other a folded document stamped with the town's seal. "Good morning, Miss Thompson," the taller man began, voice clipped and businesslike. "I'm George Palmer, and this is my colleague, Mark Reynolds. We're here on behalf of the Municipal Safety Inspection Department." Mia's heart sank. The barn was old and worn, yes, but it had been standing for over 100 years. Surely that counted for something. "We're conducting a safety evaluation of the property," Palmer continued, stepping inside uninvited. "There have been complaints about the structural integrity of the building and potential hazards." David stepped forward, his protective stance clear. "We're aware of the barn's condition, but it's structurally sound. We're in the process of restoration." Palmer's gaze flicked to Mia, a subtle challenge in his eyes. "The county has received reports that the barn poses a risk to public safety. If we find it unsafe, we'll have to recommend condemnation and possible demolition." Mia felt a wave of disbelief crash over her. After all the work, the discoveries, the hope she had nurtured in this place, it could all be erased with a few signatures. "Is there no way to work with you?" she asked, voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "This barn means more than just a building. It's a home, a connection to the past." Reynolds leafed through his papers, then shook his head. "Our hands are tied. If the structure fails inspection, we must act in the interest of public safety." Word of the inspection spread quickly through the small town, and with it, the familiar whispers and sideways glances returned. Neighbors who had once mocked Mia's purchase now voiced concerns about safety, their skepticism cloaked in the language of regulations and liability. At the local diner, conversations buzzed with doubt. "I told her it was a bad idea," one woman muttered over coffee. "That barn's a hazard. She's lucky it's still standing." Mia felt the sting of their words, but refused to let it break her. Instead, she clung to the discoveries in the barn's hidden chamber, the journals, the artifacts, and the map. They were proof of something deeper, a legacy worth fighting for. One afternoon, as rain slicked the windows and the barn creaked under the wind's assault, a knock came at the door. Mia opened it to find an elderly man with silver hair and kind eyes, holding a weathered book tucked under his arm. "I'm Harold Jenkins," he said, extending a hand. "Local historian. I heard about your barn and thought I might be able to help." Mia invited him inside, curiosity piqued. Over steaming cups of tea, Harold shared tales of the town's history, weaving Eleanor's story into a larger tapestry of forgotten struggles and resilience. This barn was more than a shelter, Harold explained, flipping through old records. It was a hub for midwives and women who needed refuge. Eleanor's work was known, respected by some, feared by others. Mia nodded, feeling the pieces fall into place. I want to preserve that history, to show the town what this barn really means. Harold smiled. With the right documentation, you could apply for historic preservation status. It might protect the barn from demolition. Hope flickered anew. Mia knew the path ahead would be arduous. Legal battles, paperwork, and more skepticism. But the possibility of saving the barn breathed fresh life into her resolve. David and Lena rallied around her, their support unwavering. Together, they began gathering every scrap of evidence, photographs, journals, historical records, to build a case. Mia spent hours at the library, poring over archives, while David consulted with contractors about the barn's condition. Despite the mounting pressure, moments of warmth and solidarity emerged. A few neighbors, touched by Eleanor's story and Mia's determination, offered words of encouragement and even a helping hand. Yet, the threats loomed large. Official notices arrived, demanding repairs and safety upgrades within tight deadlines. The weight of bureaucracy pressed down heavily, each letter a reminder of the fragile hold Mia had on her dream. Pregnancy fatigue crept in, making the long days harder to bear. The nights were restless, filled with anxious thoughts of what might be lost. But every time doubt threatened to overwhelm her, Mia pressed her palm to her belly, drawing strength from the life growing inside. One evening, David sat beside her on the creaky old porch steps, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "We're in this together," he said softly. "No matter what happens, we'll find a way." Mia leaned into him, feeling the steady beat of his heart and the quiet assurance it brought. The barn was more than a building. It was a symbol of resilience, a beacon of hope against the odds. As the community's skepticism persisted, Mia clung to Eleanor's journals and Harold's guidance. The fight to preserve the barn had become a battle for identity, history, and the future. And with each challenge, Mia's determination only grew stronger. The morning sun filtered through the cracked windows of the barn, casting mottled patterns of light and dust across the worn wooden floor. Mia sat at a folding table in the corner, a stack of papers spread out before her. Legal documents, historical records, photographs of the barn's hidden compartments, and notes from conversations with Harold Jenkins, the local historian. Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached for her coffee mug, the caffeine barely cutting through the exhaustion that clung to her bones. David leaned against a support beam, watching her with quiet concern. "You've been at this for hours," he said softly. "You need to rest." Mia shook her head, determination tightening her jaw. "There's too much to do. If we want to fight the condemnation notice, we have to move fast." The letter had arrived just days before. A formal warning from the county demanding immediate repairs or face demolition. The threat loomed large, a ticking clock counting down the days Mia had left to save the barn. But alongside the fear, there was a spark of hope. Harold had suggested applying for historic preservation status, a legal shield that could protect the barn if they could prove its significance. That path, however, was littered with paperwork, inspections, and bureaucratic hurdles. Mia had contacted an attorney specializing in historic preservation law, and their meeting had been both encouraging and overwhelming. The attorney explained the process, the evidence required, and the possibility of delays or denials. But most importantly, she offered a glimmer of possibility, a chance. Mia's mind raced as she sifted through the evidence. Eleanor's journals, the midwife's kit, the map revealing the underground spring, and now, a small, hidden compartment David had discovered behind a loose board near the barn's east wall. "Look at this," David said, kneeling beside her as he carefully pried open the compartment. Inside lay a worn leather pouch and a brittle bundle of papers tied with a faded ribbon. Mia's hands shook as she untied the ribbon, revealing letters and notes written in elegant, looping handwriting. They appeared to be correspondence between Eleanor and other women in the community. Pleas for support, exchanges of remedies, and warnings about those who sought to undermine her work. "These letters could be crucial," Mia whispered. "They show Eleanor was respected, that her work mattered." Lena, who had joined them that morning, lifted a small, rusted key from the pouch. "Maybe this opens another secret," she suggested, eyes bright with excitement. Mia smiled despite the fatigue. Their discovery felt like a lifeline, a tangible connection to the past that strengthened their case. But the physical toll was undeniable. The strain of pregnancy added weight to every step, every decision. Nights were restless, filled with dreams of the barn crumbling, of losing the sanctuary she was fighting to preserve. The pressure pressed down, threatening to overwhelm her spirit. One afternoon, as she rested against a tree outside the barn, Lena found her, concern etched across her face. "You're pushing yourself too hard," she said gently. "You need to take care of yourself, for you and the baby." Mia sighed, the tension in her shoulders loosening just a fraction. "I know. But this barn, it's not just a building. It's a promise. If I give up, I'm giving up on so much more." Lena nodded, understanding the depth of her friend's resolve. "We're here for you. You don't have to do this alone." That support became a lifeline. David and Lena took on more of the hands-on work, clearing debris, making minor repairs, and organizing the growing collection of documents, while Mia focused on the legal and historical aspects. Together, they formed a quiet, determined team. Their efforts caught the attention of a few neighbors, some of whom began to see the barn through different eyes. A local teacher offered to bring her history class to the site, intrigued by Eleanor's story, and a small group of volunteers came forward to help with cleanup. The community's shifting attitude was subtle but meaningful. The barn was gradually transforming from a symbol of ridicule to one of curiosity and respect. One evening, as the golden light of sunset bathed the fields, Mia sat with David on the barn's creaky porch. She clutched the bundle of letters, reading aloud passages that revealed Eleanor's steadfast spirit and the challenges she had faced. David listened quietly, then squeezed her hand. "You're carrying that same spirit," he said softly. Mia smiled, tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. "I hope so. For the baby, and for all the women who came before us." The barn, once a forgotten relic, was becoming a beacon of resilience and hope. The fight was far from over, but with every document uncovered, every neighbor won over, Mia felt the walls closing in not with threat, but with the promise of protection. As the days passed, the attorney helped them file the application for historic preservation, a detailed dossier filled with evidence, testimonies, and photographs. The process was grueling, requiring patience and perseverance. But Mia faced it with unwavering determination. In quiet moments, she allowed herself to imagine the future. A restored barn filled with light and laughter, a sanctuary for her child, and a living tribute to Eleanor's legacy. Despite the challenges ahead, Mia knew one thing for sure. This barn was no longer just a building. It was a testament to courage, to hope, and to the unbreakable bonds between past and present. The days leading up to the town council hearing were a whirlwind, each moment heavy with anticipation and mounting pressure. Mia found herself caught between exhaustion and determination, the weight of her pregnancy matched only by the gravity of the fight ahead. The barn, once a crumbling relic dismissed by neighbors, had become the center of a storm that rippled through the small community. Inside the barn, the air was thick with dust and the scent of old wood. Mia paced the worn floorboards, clutching the map they had found buried beneath the floorboards of the underground chamber. The map, with its delicate annotations and cryptic symbols, had led them to discover an underground spring beneath the barn, a rare and precious source of water that the town relied on, though few knew its origin. David stood nearby, setting up a makeshift presentation board adorned with photographs of the barn's interior, the hidden compartments, and images of Eleanor's journals. The evidence they had gathered was more than just historical. It was a testament to the barn's significance, not only as a home, but as a vital piece of the community's heritage. Lena moved between stacks of documents, organizing testimonials from neighbors who had begun to see the barn in a new light. Some spoke of family histories tied to Eleanor's legacy. Others shared memories of the barn as a refuge, a place where women had found solace and support through difficult times. Mia's heart pounded as she rehearsed her speech, the words she hoped would sway the council and the townspeople alike. She thought of Eleanor, her courage echoing through the pages of the journals, and of the life growing inside her. A new beginning intertwined with the past. The morning of the hearing arrived with a gray sky and a chill in the air. The town hall was packed, whispers rippling through the crowd as the hearing commenced. Mia took a deep breath, stepping to the podium with her notes clutched tightly. She began by sharing Eleanor's story, the midwife whose knowledge and bravery had saved countless lives, only to be driven away by fear and suspicion. She spoke of the hidden chambers beneath the barn, the artifacts that told a story of resilience and care, and the discovery of the underground spring that sustained the town through generations. As she spoke, Mia's voice grew steadier, fueled by the conviction that had carried her this far. She painted a picture of the barn not as a decaying structure, but as a living monument to the strength of the women who had walked its halls and the community that had grown around it. Some in the crowd listened with rapt attention, moved by the history and the hope woven into Mia's words. Others remained skeptical, their arms crossed, faces hard with doubt. A local developer, seated near the back, stood to oppose the preservation efforts. His voice was smooth but firm as he outlined plans to buy the property and replace the barn with commercial development. A gas station, he claimed, that would bring jobs and growth to the town. Mia's heart clenched at the thought of losing the barn to concrete and asphalt. But she held her ground, responding with quiet resolve. She stressed the importance of preserving history, of honoring the stories that shaped the community, and of protecting a rare natural resource hidden beneath the barn's foundations. The hearing stretched on, voices rising and falling, passion battling pragmatism. When it was over, the council retreated to deliberate, leaving Mia and the crowd to wait in tense silence. Outside, the wind stirred the fallen leaves, and Mia's thoughts drifted to the barn, the hidden rooms, the journals, the spring. She felt the presence of Eleanor beside her, a silent companion in the struggle for justice. After hours that felt like days, the council returned with their decision. The barn would be granted historic protection, halting demolition plans and recognizing its significance as a cultural and environmental landmark. A wave of relief washed over Mia, mingling with exhaustion and gratitude. Neighbors who had once doubted approached her with apologies and congratulations, their faces softened by the barn's newfound place in the heart of the community. David pulled her into a tight embrace, whispering words of pride and admiration. Lena beamed, her eyes shining with joy. The barn, once a symbol of ridicule and neglect, was now a beacon of hope and resilience. Mia knew the fight was far from over. There were repairs to be made, lives to build, and histories to preserve. But in that moment, victory was theirs. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the fields, Mia stood at the barn's threshold, feeling the steady kick of her unborn child. The legacy of Eleanor and the promise of a new life intertwined, breathing strength into the worn timbers and into Mia's heart. The barn was no longer just a building, it was a sanctuary, a testament to the power of perseverance, and a home waiting to be transformed by love and hope. The town hall buzzed with tension as the hearing resumed, the air thick with anticipation and the hum of whispered conversations. Mia sat at the edge of the room, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, the weight of the moment pressing down on her like a physical force. The crowd was a mix of familiar faces, neighbors who had once doubted her, supporters who had rallied behind the barn's cause, and skeptics whose silence spoke volumes. When the council president called the meeting to order, the room fell into a heavy silence. Mia rose slowly, smoothing the front of her blouse, and stepped to the podium with a steady breath. Her voice, though soft, carried the strength of conviction cultivated through months of struggle. I stand before you not just as a property owner, but as a bearer of a legacy, she began, eyes sweeping the room. This barn is more than wood and nails. It is the heart of a story that has shaped our community. Eleanor, a woman who once lived and cared here, fought against fear and prejudice to protect those in need. Her story is etched into these walls. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. The hidden spring beneath this barn is a lifeline that has nourished our town for generations. To lose this place would be to sever a vital connection to our history and our future. As she spoke, some faces softened, memories flickering behind doubtful eyes. Others remained stoic, their arms crossed in quiet resistance. Then, the local developer stood, his polished shoes clicking against the hardwood floor as he approached the microphone. His tone was confident, practiced. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "while I respect the history Ms. Thompson has shared, we must consider the future of our town. This barn sits on prime land that could bring jobs, commerce, and growth. A new gas station would serve our community's needs far better than an aging structure." Murmurs rippled through the audience, some nodding in agreement, others shaking their heads. Mia met his gaze, feeling the familiar sting of opposition, but refusing to waver. "Progress is important," she replied, "but it should not come at the cost of erasing our roots. The barn is a symbol of resilience and hope, a sanctuary that has stood through hardship and change. It deserves to be preserved." The debate grew heated, voices rising as community members took sides. Some spoke passionately about economic benefits, others about the importance of heritage and identity. Amid the clamor, a group of women stepped forward, sharing personal stories of family ties to the barn and Eleanor's legacy. Their voices carried the weight of lived experience, reminding the council that the barn was not just a building, but a repository of collective memory. One elderly woman, her hands trembling slightly, spoke of her grandmother who had found refuge within the barn's walls during hard times. "This place saved lives," she said, tears glistening. "It's more than history. It's part of who we are." The tide of sentiment shifted, the crowd's mood softening as empathy took root. After hours of testimony and deliberation, the council reconvened to deliver their verdict. Mia held her breath as the chairwoman spoke, her voice steady but solemn. After careful consideration of the historical significance and the community's input, the council has decided to grant the barn historic protection status. Demolition plans are hereby halted. A collective exhale swept through the room, relief and joy mingling in the air. Mia's eyes filled with tears as she looked at David and Lena, their smiles reflecting the triumph they had fought so hard to achieve. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, bathing the town in a warm, golden light. Supporters gathered around Mia, offering congratulations and apologies for past doubts. The developer approached quietly, extending a hand. "Congratulations," he said, a hint of respect in his tone. "You've made a strong case." Mia shook his hand, a sense of closure settling over her. The battle was far from over. Restoration and legal challenges lay ahead. But the victory was a beacon in the darkness. That evening, standing on the porch of the barn, Mia felt the cool breeze brush against her skin. She placed a hand on her belly, feeling the steady flutter of movement within. The barn, once dismissed and derided, now stood as a testament to perseverance, community, and the enduring power of stories. As the stars began to twinkle overhead, Mia whispered a quiet promise to protect this home, to honor Eleanor's legacy, and to build a future where hope could flourish. The journey was just beginning, but for the first time in a long while, Mia felt the solid ground of possibility beneath her feet. The morning sun spilled golden light across the fields as Mia stood on the porch of the barn, now transformed from a crumbling relic into a warm, inviting home. The scent of fresh paint mingled with the earthy aroma of wood and wildflowers blooming nearby. Children's laughter echoed softly from the yard, weaving through the air like a gentle melody that filled her with quiet joy. Inside, the barn had been lovingly renovated. The rough-hewn beams polished and sturdy, the walls adorned with photographs and mementos honoring Eleanor's legacy. The journals that had once whispered secrets in dim underground chambers now rested in a glass case, a testament to resilience and hope. The midwife's kit lay carefully displayed, a symbol of care and courage that had inspired Mia through the darkest days. A group of expectant mothers gathered in the bright, sunlit room that had once been the barn's main stall. Mia watched them with a smile as they shared stories, their voices soft but strong. The space had been transformed into a community center, a sanctuary where women could find support, connection, and empowerment. A living tribute to Eleanor's spirit. As she moved through the room, Mia's hand instinctively found the curve of her belly. Her baby, now a vibrant presence in her life, kicked gently, a reminder of the journey they had taken together. This barn was more than just a home. It was a symbol of new beginnings, a place where past and future entwined. Outside, neighbors gathered for the annual celebration honoring Eleanor Whitman. The event had become a cherished tradition, a day to remember the woman who had defied fear and prejudice to bring healing and hope. Stories were shared, songs sung, and the barn's history celebrated with warmth and reverence. Mia felt a surge of gratitude as she looked around at the faces, some familiar, others new, all united by a shared commitment to preserve this place of refuge and strength. The barn had become a beacon, drawing together a community that had once doubted and now embraced its meaning. David stood beside her, his hand finding hers in a quiet gesture of partnership and love. Together, they had weathered storms of doubt and opposition, and now stood on the threshold of a future built on perseverance and faith. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the fields, Mia took a deep breath, the cool evening air filling her lungs with promise. The barn's silhouette against the fading light was a reminder that even in the darkest times, hope could flourish. She whispered a silent thank you to Eleanor, to the women who had come before, and to the life growing within her. This was their legacy, a testament to courage, community, and the enduring power of home. With the gentle hum of celebration around her and the steady beat of new life beneath her hand, Mia embraced the journey ahead, knowing that the barn story was far from over. It was a story of resilience, love, and the unbreakable bonds that connect past, present, and future.